There's a couple plaques. Not so much here. I'm missing the town plaque, so I'll just read it. But Southern sympathizers settled in Buena Vista Canyon in 1861 after discovery of silver ore. This was a silver mining camp. It was called Dixie, as I said earlier. Their camp's name changed to Unionville in 1862 when the will of the neutral and the northern faction of the population prevailed. And of course, the town was a product of Buena Vista mining activity. Unionville lost the distinction to Winnemucca in 1873. By the late 1870s, most of the local ores were depleted, but remained a pleasant place enjoying more amenities, less violence than most mining towns in spite of the strong political feelings. Today, Unionville still retains its picturesque views. And this town had about 35 Chinese laborers that worked in the mines. No, I think 18 men were sentenced by a judge. I'll have to look later when I'm in the cemetery. I'll take a look at my notes because it's hard to remember such an in-depth history. But I think I recall there was a scandal in the mid-1800s where quite a few men had gathered up the Chinese laborers because they were very prejudiced back then against the Chinese, and they shipped them off to another town on the train, and it turned out to be one of the biggest racial or discrimination cases right here in Unionville. Out of all the ghost towns in the region, all the discrimination, this town the judge convicted over 18 men of this crime, and it turned out to be a huge conspiracy. A lot of racism. But this says Reunion in Unionville. Across the road and down about 300 feet was the original Unionville School. Built in 1862, this adobe building was the first public structure in the county. This is Pershing County, so that was the first one. Most of the structures that started here were either tents or adobes. It says it was used by organizations as the Union League, Knights of the Golden Circle, the Freemasons, and the Ancient and Honorable Order of E. Clampus Vitus. It served the community until its demolition in 1871. How strange, because the boom years were 1870s and 1860s, and when the ore was gone, the town dwindled. It died, and now there's only 10 to 20 people that live here. The old wagon shop is today a bed and breakfast, but exactly 109 years later, members of the ECV gathered here to hold a reunion in commemoration of this pietous event. To the rear of this marker are the remains of Mark Twain's cabin. Also a member of ECV, he built this structure in 1861 and lived here before moving to Virginia City. This is one of the oldest structures, and he came here. Before he came here, he stopped at Honey Lake Station, also known as Williams Station. After they rebuilt, he stayed the night, and his opinion of the place was it was overcrowded. Men were sleeping outside. They only had 1 or 2 guest rooms, and then the saloon, and if you didn't grab a guest room, you slept outside. And when he was there, 20 hay wagons showed up with multiple riders, and he felt it was overcrowded, but well furnished. When he came here and he found mica instead of silver on the ground, he was done. He's like, I'm out of here. But he built this house. And this is what this town is most notable for. You could see that there's snow up on the peak. He felt this place was very dismal and dark, saying, it doesn't seem like it to me, but he would say that the sun just would, in the morning, would reach the tops of the mountains while the canyon remained dark. We're going to have a picnic here. We're going to relax. I might take a little ride up here to see if I could find any mining equipment or remnants. But this is a park. And they made this park because, obviously, this is one of the most oldest intact sites in town, all the way at the back end of town. It's a beautiful place, and it's amazing that it's still standing, and I don't know if I'll get EVPs. When mining didn't work out for Mark Twain, what he did, son, well, he became a writer. That was all due to the incident that happened here. He had felt embarrassed because he thought he had silver ore and was striking it rich. He expected to see the walls of the canyon aligned with silver, and he didn't find no silver. He felt that the general laborers, he referred to them as, in one of his books, they might as well be slaves because working down in the mines was treacherous, it was dangerous, it was hot, you couldn't stay down there too long, it was dark. Men died in those mines, and he built his home prior to this home, but he wanted to be a prospector. It didn't work out, so he moved on to Virginia City, where he became a writer for their newspaper. But this town had a newspaper or two. It also had a post office. All the things a town would have. Huh? Well, he was a writer before he came here. He thought that mining would be able to provide him with more money than being a writer. And it turned out like most miners who came to places like this failed, where they just ended up bust. They just, you know, they tried staking claims on various properties, and they would dig in there and end up finding like pyrite or mica, which has no worth. You could see Mark Twain's house, and this is what the town's known for. So we'll just film both of them, and then you can actually see them for yourselves and look inside. An old stove. More than likely, this was his cabin. Because most cabins were just one room. Yeah, you see this goes down. If you look. Definitely. It's a two-room cabin. If you look carefully, that room goes right into the hillside. Do you know why? Anybody? Because you could store your food and keep it cool. Those were considered the fridge of its day back in the 1800s. So this is his cabin. I would say this one may have been built around the same time, maybe even earlier. It all depends. It all depends. I really don't know what each structure is in the town. I just photograph them and we put them up on our site and we talk about the history. Either cabin is historical. The adobe one and this wood and this is lava rock. So, you know, you think about the stacking that had to go through this, and you can see in between there's a little bit of mortar or mud to kind of keep it together. But he built this with his hands more than likely, and he probably built it himself with very little help. Back in those days, if you wanted a house, you built your own house. That was the way to go. I'll get into a more in-depth history when I get to the cemetery, so we can talk about those that are no longer with us. It is picturesque, that's for sure. Looks like these walls may have ran all the way down at one time, and now they're crumbling. Mohia Whitaker Memorial Park. Well, the other sign says something else. But you can see there's a nice stone wall back over here. Let's see if I can bring it up close to you guys. Pretty cool, huh? A lot of the town was spread out through here. Now you have a bunch of new homes that are built, and everything that's left from the past is slowly fading away. That's why I had gotten pictures. Most of the miners that were in this canyon, this is really where the mining district began. The silver mines go up around the corner. Some of them are found. If you look here, you can see. I'll show you. And as I was saying, the Chinese were very discriminated upon. A lot of anti-Chinese racism. The Humboldt Register, a newspaper in town, said the Chinese are like trained monkeys or baboons. And of course the Anti-Chinese League, which was 18 men, possibly more, in January or winter of 1869, there was 35 Chinese males. They resided here, put on a wagon, taken to Mill City, and asked to board the Central Pacific Railway. And there was an indictment, and I do have their names, but I'm not going to go through all 18. But it wasn't a significant event here. There was a lot of politics in this town between the Union and the Confederate sympathizers, and then you have the anti-Chinese movement. A lot of Chinese went back to their own country after that, and a lot of the Chinese returned here after the mines shut down to see if they could make an extra buck. The events of 1869 did not sway the Chinese from coming back and mining. After the decline, some of the Chinese came back because the water here is, you could see if you look, there's wells. There's a lot of well waters. The Chinese miners used rockers rather than sluices at their sites, and in 1905 there were still Chinese miners that continued to work in the American Canyon. By then, a lot of them were elderly and numbered fewer than 10. The American Canyon's known for its placer gold. Actually, it's the placer gold in the American River, and that's pretty high quality grade gold. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about Mark Twain more in detail, since we're already here at his cabin. But Twain arrived here in 1861. In 1860, Williams Station was burned. So on his way here, he did spend some time at Williams Station, because I guess after the burning, you can't really burn rock, but you could easily, this type of lava rock can retain a lot of heat, so it was rebuilt within that year, because you had to have that. It was a very important overland station. He went down to write, the rest of the landscape was made of bleak mountain walls that rose so high in the sky from both sides of the canyon that the village was left as it were, far down the bottom of a crevice. It was always daylight on the mountaintops, a long time before darkness lifted in and revealed Unionville. He described Unionville as consisting of about, I believe it was 11 cabins and a liberty pole. 6 of the cabins were strung along one side of the canyon, and the other 5, he said, faced them. And then he cited, so vanished my dreams, so melted my wealth away, so toppled the airy castle to earth and left me stricken of forlorn, he noted. Moralizing, I observed then, all the glitters is not gold. It was mica, a lot of mica, and people get it confused with silver. He did learn one thing from his expedition here, that it's better to have the miners do the work rather than you go down in the mines and start taking a pickaxe and trying to sift through the mica to find the silver. There was more money to be made owning the mine and having people work under you. Despite his travels, Unionville, after Mark Twain left, continued to grow. Some people say it had up to 1,500. At times, people said it had 3,000. It had lots of businesses, including 10 stores, 6 hotels, 9 saloons, a brewery, and a newspaper, and I believe a post office, very short-lived. It lost the county seat to Winnemucca in 1873, and by 1880, Unionville began to decline. The Old Pioneer Bed and Breakfast is a 2-story bed and breakfast located at a former wagon maker's home. Only the stone walls remain of the original building, and it has 11 rooms, 6 with private baths. And I will say that I am not going to give this place a good review. The owner of the Old Pioneer Garden Bed and Breakfast was kind of rude. I was taking some photos of some wagons and filming. There was no signs. It was wide open. I went across the desert, just took a pic of some old mining rusted machinery or cart rails, piles of wood, anything that's left, anything that was standing apparently was toppled over. I found piles and piles of wood. And sadly, downtown is non-existent. Now, I seen a pic 10 years ago, and I seen 4 or 5 cabins standing downtown. One of them being an old saloon. No longer stands, but that's where it did stand. And the bed and breakfast guy came out. He's like, what's he doing? Did he ask permission? Did he talk to the owner? Then he called the owner, and the owner showed up. So I went through more drama. What is it with these people out at these locations and their unfriendliness? Why be unfriendly? I was about to bring tourism to this area. This guy, I could have sent hundreds of people to this bed and breakfast, and I'm not doing it now. I'm not doing it because of the unfriendliness. I've had a woman try to get ready to have her dogs attack me. She just stood on her porch, went outside, stared at me, went back in, got her dogs, and was just staring at me, and I wasn't even on her property. Then 2 guys looking out the window at me, and then the guy at the bed and breakfast was very rude towards us, and then called the owner of that property, and I walked off. No problem. If you don't want me on there, I'll just leave. I only went to photograph some of the vintage rusty equipment and wagons. It's not like I'm going to put a ore wagon on my back and walk out with it. A lot of people come to Unionville to take photographs. There's over 50 websites that got pictures of Unionville families and everything, and it's not as friendly as a lot of people say. People were kind of rude to my family and I. This is pretty much the gist of it. We'll head to the cemetery. take some photos, do some EVP sessions and some EMF, and we're out of here. And I got a nice giant cemetery I'm doing on the way home. It's historic, it's large, and it's kind of in rural Lovelock, which is about 35, 40 miles from us. And then I'll head home for the day, and I'll watch Horrible Bosses too, and eat some nice lasagna, and call it a day. And thank God I didn't get shot. There's homemade signs, no trespass, and violators will be shot, prosecuted, and it's just like, really? And this is kind of like a tourist attraction outside Winnemucca, and you have to expect people. I'm holding my camera up. What is he doing? I'm not taking pictures. That's why I'm holding my camera up and pointing them at wagons and historical buildings and barns and old remnants of the town. Come on. People would have to know that this place is a historical landmark. The whole town, this whole canyon's historical. If people are going to come here and they're going to photograph and videotape Mark Twain's cabin, it's just the way it is. People love ghost towns. And the guy at the bed and breakfast, he doesn't realize it. It's like, I came here to give you advertising, to promote your business, to bring you customers. And you turned around and you showed me rudeness. It's creepy. Do not say at the old Pioneer Garden bed and breakfast, because unless you want to be treated with rudeness, because I was treated with rudeness. He asked my girlfriend, what's he doing? I was in the desert, just trudging through some sagebrush, taking photos. She said he's taking pics. And he thought my son was an adult. He's 13 years old. And, he's like 5 foot tall. And he called the owner, and it's just like, come on, man. You could just come up to me and ask me to leave, or ask me what I'm doing. I'm with my 2 kids and my girlfriend. I think we're going to leave this place. I'm not going to give it any more hype than it deserves. It is historical, but half of it is behind fences or on people's newly built properties. The only thing that's really accessible is the Mark Twain cabin and this adobe cabin. Mark Twain may have owned them both. I really don't know. But the property is beautiful, and it is worth, at least it's worth photographing. And I came and I got what I could. I got a lot of the old structures. Downtown's all gone. It's like all the wood structures blew over. I found a bunch of wood buildings that were toppled in that area I wasn't supposed to be, supposedly. But yet it was wide open desert, and there was no signs and no fencing right there. I got what I could, and I wish I could do more for our viewers. At least I got it on film, and at least I took pictures, and at least I took video footage, so you can see that area of all the old wagons, rails, and ore carts, and things that were relevant in the 1800s, including an old meat grinder. This canyon, you can see, is lush, and you know why? Because the Buena Vista Creek flows all the way. You see all the snow melt? It all melts, flows down the canyon, and keeps the creek growing. Therefore, the whole canyon's littered with cottonwoods. These trees were planted here, by the way, the evergreens. Some of the older cottonwoods that you see in the canyon straight ahead are all due to the fact that it's very lush. And in the spring, this place is so green. I wish I could come here in the spring, but I'm just not a fan of rattlesnakes. I've dealt with too many. I play with them. I have fun with them. One of these days, I'm going to get bit. So it's not safe for the children to come out here in the warmer months. It's actually very unsafe, and I think children need to be careful. I think most families should be careful coming out here in the summer months or warmer months, because rattlesnakes are all on the hillsides. For every 100 square feet, there's at least 2 or 3, statistically, in the high desert. So you have to be careful. Old Unionville is found throughout this canyon, and it's all fenced off. You really can't, the places that you access, people come out of their houses yelling and staring and trying to zig their dogs on you. It's not a friendly place. I could have went to Austin, Nevada today, where they welcome people at the pub and welcome explorers and people to really delve into the history, but not here. They don't like it. Just seems like they don't like outsiders. I get this unfriendly feeling like I'm not wanted. But a lot of foundations here were made of adobe, stone, and wood. There's a lot of old barns. Like I said, the schoolhouse is somebody lives at. It says no trespass, and there's a trailer and someone parked next to it. I'm not going to mess with it. I took a photo, and we'll put it on our site. But there's a lot of good stories. There's a lot of ghost stories here, too. we felt this would be a good investigation to at least run some EVP, maybe see if there's any ghostly activity, any EMF activity. You can see these trees, these were cottonwood trees. These stumps, these are cottonwood stumps. 3 feet, 4 feet across. At least a couple 100 years old. Here's a cottonwood here. Nothing remains of it. It's been cut and it's dead. But it gives the town character. This is Lord Rick.